Welcome to Tales She Told Me, a podcast featuring honest conversation about what it means to be a woman, a mother, and in business. I'm your host, Farrah Haidar. Today, we will be discussing creative blocks, and joining me is Laura Cayouette. Best known as Leonardo DiCaprio's sister in Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, Laura has acted in over 60 movies and TV shows, including Now You See Me, True Detective, and Friends. She's currently recurring on Oprah Winfrey and Ava DuVernay's Queen Sugar. Laura is also the author of 8 books, including No Small Parts, An Actor's Guide to Turning Minutes into Moments and Moments into a Career, with a foreword by Richard Dreyfuss and endorsements from Kevin Costner, Lou Diamond Phillips, and Reginald Hudlin, as well as Writing Unblocked, How I Went from Writing 1 book in 20 years to 5 books in 4 years, which help writers of all skill levels tell their stories and create their projects. Her 5-book Charlotte Reed Mystery Series is a love letter to the people and culture of New Orleans, starting in 2009 as the Saints are headed to the Super Bowl. An award-winning filmmaker who's produced a feature film with Quentin Tarantino, Laura is currently working on a documentary about over-tourism and the French Quarter, Finding a Balance. Cayouette earned her master's degree in creative writing and English literature at the University of South Alabama, where she was presented the 2014 Distinguished Alumni Award. She's taught both English and acting directing at various universities. A member of the Pussyfooters dance crew, you can find her parading in Mardi Gras and working with local nonprofits. So talk about a triple threat, right? Like this is an incredible bio. And it's so awesome. So obviously from your bio, you're no stranger to creativity. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this topic is because I've been told all my life, you should be a writer. You should write a book. You have so much in you. And I just said, and I think in fact, I have several books languishing in draft format, but we're not going to talk about those. But I keep feeling blocked. So I'm being a little selfish with this interview, but I'm wondering, what's the most common writing block you see or that you hear from since you've been training on this?
Well, the thing that happens the most frequently that I hear from clients and from people, and really mostly from people that when they find out I'm an author, they're like, oh, I have this great idea, or, So the thing I hear the most often is that people have these terrific ideas and genuinely great ideas. They'll throw them at me and I'll say, you're right, that's a great idea. But they don't feel equipped to tell the story for a variety of reasons. The most common of which are they started to write something and they weren't able to maintain that. They got it going and then they wrote 13 pages and then that's it. Or they wrote 3 paragraphs and it was going so well. And then they took a lunch break and that was the end of the book. Mm-hmm. Or they have a lot of information about their idea, like maybe it's based on something that happened to them and it's a true story. They know the whole story. They know the characters, they know the plot points, but they have no idea how to write. And so they don't start at all. They don't write anything down. Mm-hmm. And so those are the 2 most common that I see are somebody who starts something and can't finish it, or somebody who's paralyzed with the unknownness of writing. And so they're just like, yeah. And those people tend to fall into 2 groups, the biggest of which is the people who just lament. Mm-hmm. And the other is the group of people who sort of search around for somebody else who might write that for them, So like, they're not going to write any of it. But if they run into me and find out I'm a writer, then it's like, I have a great idea for you to write. And I have a big, for me, it's very important that people write their own stories. Now you can have somebody else rewrite your story once you've written it. You could have somebody make your story more literary or put a comedic polish on it with jokes or what, like you could do that, but your stories are your stories. And really you should be writing them, even if it's just the bare bones.
Yeah.
So that's the most common thing I see is that people have all the energy and enthusiasm and they know they have something to say. They know they have they've experienced something unique and rare, or they've gone through an emotional roller coaster that they want to share, or they've learned something. Even things like a how-to book, like my acting book and my writing books are both nonfiction how-to books. And you might do something all day, every day that you're an expert at, that you know exactly how to, rebuild a carburetor or whatever, but you don't know how to write that down and explain it to somebody else in a how-to book. So you have all this wisdom and information that's going to die with you because you didn't know how to make that into a manual or a how-to book of some sort.
Yeah, I find myself I try and then I get somewhere and then I stop and then I try again and then I get somewhere and then I stop and then I try a new one and then I get somewhere and I stop. And some of it is what you're saying, like, I don't know how to express this, or I don't know but then I also have the gremlins in my head saying, who's going to read this? This is right. Interesting. You know what I mean? Or, I end up telling rather than showing and like all that kind of stuff. And I feel like getting back to it is just,
because you're probably thinking that what you have already written should be good. Instead of just written. Yes. And the truth is that really forget what you've written until after you have already written it. Like all the idea of critiquing what you've already written or rewriting what you've already written while you're writing. I mean, can you imagine if we tried to edit movies as we were shooting them? Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And yet writers do it all the time. They stop what they're writing and go back and rewrite what they are currently writing. Yeah. I don't know how to rewrite something that I haven't already finished writing. Why would I bother rewriting something I haven't finished writing?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, so you're a proponent of just finishing the whole thing first.
Just get it done. And the method by the subtitle to writing Unblocked is how I went from writing one book in 20 years to 5 books in 4 years. Mm-hmm. And the reason that strikes me so much, the reason it makes me sort of religious about wanting, like, I have a book that can save you, is because I struggled like every other person for those 20 years, doing all the right things, like doing everything that I have a master's degree in creative writing. It's not like I had no information about how to write a book. Mm-hmm. And yet all the information I had led to me floundering for 20 years, trying to get my story out and cohesive and rewritten and perfected. But just the getting it down took, like 15 years. It was an absurd amount of time to spend just writing things down. When I now get it, what I'm capable of, mm-hmm. it kind of hurts to see how long it took me and how much I struggled the first time, because I feel like the parent of that kid that wrote that book. And I feel like going, there, honey, I know better how to teach you. Like, I do get it now that I did a lot of, head banging on the wall kind of activity where really nothing was really moving forward. I was just sort of languishing in my own thought soup.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that 100%, and I struggled because I kind of shift genres as well, where like I'm one book that I can have a draft for. And actually that's probably the one that I've had most progress with. It's a bit memoirish. It's about lessons I've learned, etc.
That's the one I wrote for 20 years, was memoir-ish. It was a fiction based on something that was my childhood. So yeah.
Yeah. And I keep saying like, no, nobody's going to want to read this, or, oh my God. And then I'm like, this is such a silly thing. Why is this so important? Like, why is it such a big deal? And then I'll read another author's book and they'll be writing about like cream cheese. And I'm fascinated because they're making a point using cream cheese and bagels, but they're making a point about life. And I think do you think that's true? I don't know. Sometimes I think if they're a good writer, you can write about a table and people would find it fascinating, because it's.
Here's the biggest misunderstanding though. You don't have to be a great writer to write great stories.
Okay. Explain to me.
Think about this.
Yep.
Some of the people who entertain you at a party, you're sitting around, you're drinking drinks and everybody's having fun. Some of the people who make you laugh or interested or pulled into a story, it's because of their storytelling ability.
Yeah.
It's because they're really good at spinning a yarn and you're just drawn in and you're pulled into their story because they could make, eating bread sound fascinating.
Yep.
Then there are other people who are not so great at telling a story, but the things that have happened to them make you go, wait, what? You did what? You went where? You met whom? And it doesn't really matter how good they are at telling that story. The information is interesting to you. Mm-hmm. So ideally, you want both. Ideally, if you find that you're not a great writer, then maybe you write your story and then pass it on to somebody else who can make it into great writing. But I don't think that you have to be that ambitious, and you certainly don't have to be so skilled or talented that somebody would dare to call you a great writer. One of the greatest stories I ever read is a book called Modoc, The True Story of the Greatest Elephant That Ever Lived, or something like that. And Modoc is written by an elephant trainer.
Okay.
Elephant trainers, he ran around with the circus. He has zero education beyond, say, 8th grade level. Because why would you go to school if you're in the circus? What are you going to use it for? It's the circus. And so the person who wrote Modoc has no education to speak of and no special skills as an author, nothing that separates them in any way as a storyteller, other than the greatest story you've ever read. I mean, it's an insane story of a little boy and an elephant who are born on the same day. It's a true story of an elephant and a boy who are born on the same day and share the most remarkable life story ever.
Wow.
And I would venture to say that the power of that story is more important than the writing of that story. And I actually personally know of 3 different people who tried to get that book made into a movie. So one day it will be a movie, in a theater near you. But that's my point, is that's how attractive it is as a story.
Wow.
Is that people that read it go, oh, I want to see this as a movie. They want to carry it with them. They want to show the world and share it. So it's a beautiful story and not well written.
Oh. So let's say you have someone who says, you know what, I'm just blocked. I don't know what to do. What would be like the first thing you say to them? You know what, why don't you try this? What would that be?
Well, I love to get people when they're in the idea stage, because I love to save you all the time and trouble of having gotten yourself to the part where you go, I'm blocked. So I love to get it so that you get a block-free journey of just having fun time the whole time. But I do get it that a lot of people are in the middle of writing something they've been writing for years or whatever, or they're started and stopped and what. So writing Unblocked is designed to help you no matter where you are in your journey. And one reason that it works is because the very first step is just figuring out what you already have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Figuring out, because you might be in a different part of your journey than you realize. It might be that you have written 300 pages, but you actually are at the very beginning of your journey because you didn't think about structure and character development and moving your story forward. And so when you get to your rewrites, you're going to have a lot of heavy lifting to do. Or it might be that you have only written an outline, but you're way further along than that person with the 300 pages because you've already spent the energy to get your outline in order and get yourself ready for the business of writing. My process is I like to spend as much time as possible game playing and having fun and preparing for the process of writing as possible, so that when I sit down, I know exactly what I'm going to write.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I'm just typing.
So I got to tell you, I've heard 2 vastly different philosophies on this. Like Maybe because, again, because I'm such a closet writer, I've gone to all these writing conferences. I listened to all these podcasts on writing. I've read all these books on writing. And you're really in one of two camps. You're either the person that sits down and just starts writing and you write till the end. And then you go back and see what you got, right? Or there are people like you who sit down and they outline and they create character profiles and they have an idea of what scene's going to go where.
Well, you're saying my process, but the first thing you said is just step 2 of my process. Okay. I mean, I've not of my 3-step prep, but of that, there's a preparation period for me. And then there's the writing period where I just write, and then don't look at it till I'm done. And then there's, the editing post having written. So to me, you can't skip a step. It's just like a relationship. You can, go to bed on the first night, but you're going to have to get to know each other eventually. You know what I mean? So you can skip steps, but you're going to have to do them eventually. It's writing a book. It's not, playing tic-tac-toe. It is difficult. It is hard. It takes time. That said, it doesn't have to take the amount of time I thought it did.
Okay. So let me ask you something. Why do you think we have all this angst as writers? I think writers are the most angsty people in the world. Like, I've never seen so many creative people just sit there and go, I can't do it. Right. So,
well, there's a number of reasons for that. One is that writing is a solitary art form.
Yes.
When I go to work as an actor, I'm surrounded by 200 people. Mm-hmm. And for better or for worse, they're in my day, So whether it's those moments where I'm trying to pretend that I'm in an intimate love scene with somebody and I'm in my underwear and there are 200 people there, or whether it's those times where I just did something that was an improv and 200 people are stifling laughing. And I realize, oh, I scored. I did something fun. This is going to get in the final cut. So for better or for worse, I have these 200 witnesses, that does something to your experience of storytelling. When you're writing, you're in your own little universe. And so it's good that you have podcasts and other versions of community so that you can get these, what you call stinking thinking, out into the world and see whether it's legitimate or not. If you're having crappy thoughts in your head and you go out into the world and everybody goes, oh yeah, no, I went through that too. You'll get past it. Doesn't that feel comforting that, okay, everybody feels this way and they all get past it. So if I just hang tight and hang tough, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. So that's part of it, is that it's sort of built into the equation is that, neurosis is when you're just sitting with yourself for too long. So, so that's part of it. I think also part of it is that, unlike crochet mm-hmm. or, rebuilding cars or any number of other crafts or hobbies or outlets for creative energy, writing is naked.
Yeah.
It's just your words, your thoughts.
Yeah.
There's nothing else there to hide behind. There's no veil. When Quentin Tarantino writes a script, there are all these other layers in between his thoughts and the movie you sit and see. I'm one of the layers. I'm going to interpret what he wrote and make it my own. It's going to get re-edited and all. So, there's all these layers in between the thoughts in his head and what you ingest. Mm-hmm. Whereas the relationship between an author who writes it down and you who read it is more like when you were in high school and you pass a note.
Yeah. It's like being naked in the high school cafeteria, right?
Yeah, it's very vulnerable.
It is.
And I compare my books to children, obviously unfairly. They're not children because they don't have blood and hearts and brains and whatever. I'm not insane. I get it. They're not children. But they are the little versions of me that I send out into the world and go, oh, please like them. Don't be mean to them. So, and I also go fight for yourself. You can do it. You're strong. You can do it. All those feelings you have when you send little pieces of yourself out into the universe, I feel toward the things I write. And so that's part of it too, is the intimacy of the relationship you have with your writing. I mean, on some level, everything we write is sort of like a diary.
Yeah. No,
and then you're saying, I'm going to put that on the shelf at the airport, you know,
I always tell people like, so I kind of wrote this first draft of it, and then I stalled. And then this podcast has for me kind of been that bridge, because one of the big things I struggle with is exposure. I'm a very private person. Despite being a very honest and transparent person, I'm also a very private person. So it's, the idea of having people read some of the most intimate details of my life can be quite overwhelming.
I'm with you. And some of us write either actually or in a literary way about people we know and love who are still alive.
Yeah. Yes.
So whether you're writing about them using their names and their, true details, or whether you're memoirizing them, whether you're fictionalizing people who will recognize themselves in your stories, that's another thing that trips a lot of people up, is the idea of, I want to be honest, I want to tell my story my way, but I also want to talk about people who I know and experiences we had. And so there's that fear of what's the reaction going to be.
Yeah. And I'm the youngest of 9. So obviously, my family was a big factor in my life. And that often does give me pause, because I understand they might have a different perspective too. It's not like I have anything really that negative to say about any of my siblings or my parents, but there's perspective, and
it's not, even if it's not negative to you, it might be negative to them. I mean, it's startling what upsets people.
Yeah. And I'm just like, and I also grew up in a culture where you are a reflection of your family. Like everything you do reflects back on your family.
What is your culture?
So I'm originally Lebanese, so
okay.
Middle East, and definitely everything you do is a reflection back onto the family. So that's also another barrier we're working through. Anyways, I don't want to make it all about
but again, all that stuff, all that mental, the wrestling match, I think all of that is stuff that you can put on, if you can't mute it, at least lower the volume on it to like a 2 while you're writing, because while you're writing, who cares?
Yeah.
It's just you seeing it. So while you're writing, write it for yourself, write it your way, write it with no editors, not even in your brain. Just write, just get it down.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said, I like to do everything ahead of time. So for me, I like to have all my information, all my notes, all my quotes, all my, everything that I already know about the book, everything I've already figured out about the book. I like to have that all in front of me as I'm writing, and have it all worked out already as I'm writing, so that I always know what's happening next. I never have writer's block. I always know exactly what's happening next.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I know if I'm going to include it. That's a later question.
Yeah. Will it fall to the floor on the edit, on the cutting floor, as they would say in the music. So
yeah, you can't cut something you never bothered to put in. You have to put it all in and then cut it later,
Streamline it. So, we've talked a lot about some of the common things you've heard about creativity, right? Some of the angsty things. What's something you hear about creativity or writing that just makes you cringe? It's like this accepted, standard, and it's a falsehood, you feel. What give me an example of that. Like, I'll give you one of mine to get to start off the conversation. So one thing that people always say is, you have to write every day. If you're going to be a writer, you have to write every single day. Right. And I'll never forget, I listened to something by Cheryl Strayed, and she's like, I don't know where that came from. I write 7 days a year. I sit down, I have a thought of a book. I carry it around for about like 355 days. And the last 10 days of the year, I write it. And that's all I do. And that's the only way I know how to write. And I'm like, this is one of the most successful writers we know. And her stuff is especially poignant to me because, again, that woman wrote about being alone for like how long, like that nothing happened in that book, but it was fascinating, right? And I was like, okay, there must be, maybe there's just no formula. Right? So what's a falsehood that you hear?
Well, one that I don't understand, that I just go, I don't get it. What does that have to do with anything? Is word count. I don't understand having a word quota.
No.
If I knew in advance that I was writing, like 100,000 words, then I suppose I could start with my deadline and work backward. How many days will I be writing? And then divide 100,000 by that many days, and then figure out how many words I should be writing per day. That I get, that's math. But if I'm just writing a book that I don't know how long it's going to be, and I don't know when the deadline is, and I don't know, like if that's what I'm doing, what does it matter how many words I write today?
Do you think it's about publishing or getting consistency? Like some people say, oh, if I'm going to publish a book, it needs to be 60 to 80,000 words or whatever it is.
According to?
I don't know. That's what I've heard. Like, again, this is something I've heard. I'm like, oh, you know, when you write a book, it has to be this.
When you write a book, it has to be written. I think that's the only rule.
That's a great rule. See, that's
well, because what other rules are there? Now there's self-publishing. If you don't jive with what's happening in the publishing industry, publish it yourself. You don't have to do anything anymore. There are no rules anymore. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't care how many people you're reaching or how much money you make or how many publishers you attract or whatever. You can write whatever you want. But I don't even with I don't understand the word count, because if I write, let's say I write 10,000 words today. Okay. That sounds like quite an accomplishment, but let's flash forward in our crystal ball and look and go, you know what? That whole day's work, I'm going to end up throwing out all but one paragraph.
Yeah.
Then what does it matter how many words I wrote that day? All that matters is that one paragraph.
Yeah.
So I don't care about how many words it takes to say the things I'm trying to say. I'm much more interested in, did I say the things I wanted to say that day? Did I get it across that day? Did I build my story forward? Did I create something that might, be interesting or attractive or, educational, or, like, I don't know. If somebody could explain to me how many words, like, why does that?
The only time I've heard of it in terms of word count is because publishers want it to be a certain length, because then they can command a certain price for it, and therefore, and that's and a lot of these books are very repetitive, especially like business books and stuff, because it's like they don't have 60,000 words, 60,000 material that's worth 60,000 words. It's really worth 30,000, but they want to sell a 60,000 word book, so you got to plump it up. That's the only.
Let's say it was a rule and you have to write 60,000 words, or else under penalty of never being read and published, you need to write 60,000 words. I still am not sure how that gets, because of the way I figured out going from one book in 20 years to 5 books in 4 years. None of it had to do with word count. It was all like, I would worry more about what chapters got, like how much of my storytelling did I finish that day? Yeah. Not how many words did it take me to say it, but where, like if I have 20 chapters and I know that in advance that I have 20 chapters worth of story to tell, and I wrote 10,000 words, but I'm still in chapter 1, then I didn't accomplish very much. But if I wrote 10,000 words and I'm now on chapter 12, then I accomplished a lot that day. So I don't know what the word count, doesn't it matter more where I am in my, I don't know. I don't get it.
I'm with you. I personally think that books should just take what they take, say what you have to say, get in, get out. But that's a personal philosophy that I have. Talking about philosophies and theories about creativity, there's a lot out there. You have the Julia Camerons of the world, you have Elizabeth Gilbert, you have Stephen King, you have Stephen Pressfield. Like, I'm just naming the top 4, and obviously I've read all of them. So my thing is, do you have a specific theory about creativity? like, they all take different stances. Like Julia Cameron's like, this comes from source and you're just a conduit. Elizabeth Gilbert, it's like, there's creative idea of looking for owners, and either you own it today, or if you don't, it's going to go to somewhere else. And, Stephen Pressfield is like the war of art, you know what I mean? And Stephen King is like, just sit down and write and don't use adverbs. So
why do people hate adverbs? Adverbs are such a useful tool, and now we've destroyed them. But anyway, that's another topic for another day.
Again, that's his thing.
I found all those schools of creativity to be useful, instructional, helpful. I did the artist way. I highly recommend that people do the artist way. I think it can seriously unlock you as a creative person, as a voice. It can help you at the very least find out things you enjoy that you didn't know you enjoyed, things you're willing to do as hobbies, or ways to dare yourself to fail. All sorts of, I found it very interesting. I think the most helpful thing about the artist way was figuring out where all those negative voices in my head came from, assigning names to who was the first person that ever said that negative thing to me, and taking it out of my head and putting it back on the people who gave it to me in the first place. And saying, oh, that's not my voice saying I suck. That's, Uncle Jim's voice. Screw Uncle Jim, So actually, I do have an uncle. I have several Uncle Jims. So, and they're all wonderful people. But the idea that creativity is an outside thing is strange to me. I think of creativity as an internal thing. And just like so many internal things, some of us have a lot of it at birth, and some of us have very little of it at birth. And all of us can learn more of it through skill acquisition.
Okay.
So, Leonardo DiCaprio is somebody who at 3 years old discovered he had talent and wanted to share it. I was 31 when I did my first movie. It took me a long time to figure out that I was ever going to be an actor. His skills and his genius were there at birth. Mine took education, nurturing, a big journey. At the end of the day, both of us have learned things through classes, but one of us spent years and years studying while the other was very busy working and learning on the job. Yeah. And so I don't know that one is better or worse. I do know that Leo is a very special actor, but I don't know that one is better or worse. All I know is they're all possible. You can be somebody who's born with that talent, like Leo, and then helps educate himself so that he can grab skills around that talent. Or you can be somebody who, maybe I was born with it, I don't know, but I didn't rely on that. I went and got educated and got a skill set going that would carry me through. I got a toolkit that would carry me through, so that even if I am talented, I wouldn't have to rely on that, that these tools would show up for me when I needed them. So I believe that about writing as well, that you can, that yes, I was born writing. I have written my whole life, but I went and got a master's degree in creative writing anyway. And I am better for it. And then I continued to study writing after that at Writers Boot Camp in LA. And I don't want to ever stop learning about writing. And so I think creativity is a set. It's not just one thing, because it's a thing you're born with, maybe, or maybe not, but it's also a thing you can acquire or train. And I used to be, I am still, but he's passed on, friends with Paul Allen. And I guess most people know him from Microsoft, but Paul was studying the human brain and was interested in imagination, creativity, and the difference between the two. And that, I think, is fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. And he was trying to discover whether you could artificially provoke either imagination or creativity.
Did he get to any conclusions before his
Well,
passing?
he passed on,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that the people that work for him are continuing their studies. I know that they are, and so I would hope that at some point they come up with some useful information for us.
Me
And
too.
if not them, then somebody else. But yeah, so the idea that creativity and imagination aren't the same thing was, oh yeah, I guess not. And then that I had to think about that, and then the idea that you would even seek to find if there is a way to artificially
Create.
get that going. That's interesting to me. The idea that you could take a pill and become more creative or more imaginative,
Oh my God.
stimulate yourself or whatever,
But so getting back to that, so you're talking about some people have more, some people have less creativity, but you say that everyone has a book in them, right? I've heard you say that.
Yes. Yes.
Why? Why do you say that?
I say that because I've been an actor now for almost 30 years, but I've been a human for even longer, almost twice as long. And I can honestly tell you, having met many people all over the planet from all stations of life, all ages, faiths, genders, backgrounds, I've met a lot of the planet. I've even met the Pope. I've met everybody, and everybody has a story. Yeah. It's just a truism. Mm-hmm. It's just a true thing. I think it's because life is a journey, and we are all having separate but connected versions of that journey.
Yeah.
And so whether you want to talk about the separateness of your journey or the connectedness of your journey, or both, you have a story to share, or a skill set, or a life hack, or something. Yeah. Something you learned, something you observed, something you survived, but you have something that you should probably at least leave to your family.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's kind of humbling times, right? To be a creative person. I find it very humbling because you're always in awe of other people's work because you realize how much it takes. And then when you create yourself, it can be humbling. So have you had experience with that? Have you, what is the most humbling thing creativity has taught you?
I like to be the best at things. I'm not a wacko about it, I think, but I like to be the best at things. I like to do well and then achieve. Yeah. And I guess they call that a type A. I'm one of those people that is achievement oriented, and I won moments. Yeah. Or I'm right moments, or whatever. I enjoy those moments. That said, I can't afford to live for them because I am an actor for money and a writer by birth. And so I am in two of the most rejection heavy industries that are just, my path is laced with broken glass. So and you're just constantly stumbling, constantly making mistakes, constantly getting tripped up, constantly getting bad news, it's just, it's a trial by fire kind of thing. And so, for me, I want to share my stories. I want to do my thing my way. And I have a context for rejection and failure that allows me to move forward knowing that I'm not going to be the best. Wow. And I figured out pretty young that one of the ways to get better at something is to hang out with people who are better than you at it.
Mm-hmm. And that's always humbling.
Always. So when I became an actor, my friends became Academy Award winners. And when my best friend from grad school, when I was studying creative writing, is Tom Franklin, who, if you Google him, is a multi award winning author. Yeah. And he and I used to edit each other's work and, in class. And So I knew he was the best in class and he thought I was the best in class. And I think it's important to surround yourself with people you know are better than you are.
Mm-hmm.
And push yourself to rise to the occasion of those friendships and those mentorships and those moments where you're afforded a glimpse down the path that's further along than you are, or where you're given an insight into what it's like to wield that much creativity or that much imagination or that much talent, even if you'll never have it for yourself. I will never, ever, ever, and I feel confident saying that, ever, ever, ever be in a position where I rival Quentin Tarantino as a screenwriter.
Yeah.
I could probably write for the rest of my life, and I will probably never come into the territory of the Shakespeare of our time. Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't have to. Why do I have to be the best to have a worthy story, a story worth telling or worth hearing or worth sharing?
You don't, and not to equate financial or publishing success with actual creative success either, right? I mean, I've seen
those are two separate things. I mean, a lot of my success comes from other people's success. When I'm writing my fiction books, obviously I want to hear that I've affected people on a heart level or an intellectual level, or they enjoyed the skills that it took to write it, or something like that. But when I'm writing a how-to book, the success is totally measurable by how other people do using those materials. Yeah. So No Small Parts for me has been a very successful book. As an acting book, it's for me very successful. But for the success I measure is how many people booked work as a direct
result
effect of having read my book. How many people wouldn't have gotten those jobs if they had never read that book? Yeah. That to me is the win. And so now here I am with the writing. To me, the measurement for success on this is not how much money does this book make for me at the end of the day. For me, the success on writing Unblocked and creating characters will be how many people finished their projects because of that book.
Yeah.
How many people figured out how to develop individualized characters that sound real and authentic and totally singular, and we're able to do that in a way that was fun and fast. So all that's my success rate, is how well did I do getting it to you. Can you now write 5 books in 4 years?
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Now we talked a little about how
that might not be your goal. It wasn't my goal until I did it. So, but can you do your goals?
Well, I will let you know, because I have the book now, so the ebook, so I will let you know. But we've talked a little bit about being humble. Now I have this question I ask of all my guests, and I'd love to ask it to you. And it's about joy. It's, what is a weird habit or ritual you have that makes your life more joyful?
Well, I used to be an avid moviegoer, and I used to, anytime my life felt like I was in a funk or I felt like I needed a creative boost or whatever, I would go watch a movie, and I, would escape into somebody else's world, somebody else's ideas, somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's troubles for 2 hours. And I would, come out of that feeling refreshed and like, okay, I can tackle anything again. I also love baths. That used to be a big thing for me, was taking a long, soaky bath. But I moved to New Orleans in 2009, and now I have a way better one now. Because New Orleans is such a different way of doing everything. And so in the intro, you said that I'm a pussyfooter dancer. So I'm going to elaborate and tell you what that means.
Sure.
The Pussyfooters are a group of over 100 women who are over the age of 30. And we're best known for dancing in the Mardi Gras parades. Mm-hmm. But we also do nonprofit events. We participate in nonprofit events 52 weeks out of the year. and we parade in about 50 parades per year. So that I can't even tell you what it feels like. We get it's like drag. We wear pink and orange wigs and corsets. We have hot pink corsets and then white combat boots. So it's like a burlesque army. and we have dances and and so for me, it's not just the camaraderie of being in that group of over 100 women who are, just trying to put a smile on your face. It's the smile thing, the exchange rate on smiles. When you are parading, you smile at somebody and they see you seeing them and they smile, feeling seen. And when they smile at you, you feel that feeling of like, oh, they like me, they are feeling me. And so you smile even more. And that goes on for 7 to 11 miles. Wow. Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's literally like the shortest parades are like 5 hours. So, you are literally out there for half a day, smile plastered to your face, dancing around in the city, surrounded by your neighbors, your friends, and then of course all the millions of people who come from all over the world who just want to see what the heck it is. So, and there are people that come every year that come from out of town, but they come every year. They just love it. So there's layer upon layer of groups of people who you're interacting with in this millisecond exchange. But it's the most re-energizing, well-filling experience. And going without it for a couple of years with COVID, I now absolutely know that's the answer to your question. That is my weird habit that keeps me not just creative. It keeps me like okay with the world.
Yeah.
To re-tap into, oh yeah, I love people. I love being out in the world. I love my city. I love dancing. I love being pink and a girl. I mean, those are all things that I say I hate all the time, Yes, because I get tired. I get angry. I get frustrated. There are days where there's so many days where I can't stand dealing with my life. And then I get a moment like that and I go, oh my God, I chose all of this on purpose. I chose every bit of my life on purpose.
Yeah.
Even this I didn't choose. Like I didn't choose to be a girl. Okay. But I totally love being a girl when I'm in a corset dancing and my, with the corsets, they push our boobs up real nice and high. So yeah, I enjoy all that whole feminine, wiggling and smiling and the big hair and I enjoy every bit of being female in that moment. So these are all things that you can look at it any which way you want to, but when I'm parading, I can only see the good.
That's awesome. That's an incredible answer. I want to thank you for that answer and thank you for sharing with us. It was an absolute pleasure having you, Laura. I know that I have learned a lot. I hope the listeners have learned a lot too. And if you want to hear more from Laura or take one of her courses, you can reach her at her website, www.lauracayouette.com, where you can purchase her book, see her acting work, and purchase her courses on creative writing. Laura has generously agreed to give you a 20% discount on both her Writing Unblocked ebook and the accompanying 6-video Creating Characters course, which is designed to help writers develop individualized characters that come to life. Just use the discount code TALESPODCAST. All links will be in the show notes below. As always, I'd love to hear from you about this episode. What book do you have in you? Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Farrah Haidar. And I'm giving away a PDF of some of the best quotes we've had on the show, beautifully designed to print and journal your thoughts. Email me at farrah@farrahhaidar.com and title it Quotes. Talk to you soon. Till then, chase your happy.